Welcome, everyone, to another enlightening episode of Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom, the show where we examine those tiny, intricate processes inside our bodies that often go unnoticed, yet mean everything for our health. I'm Ethan Foster, your ever-curious observer of the human condition. You know, the guy who would rather watch a brisk walk than actually participate in one.
And I'm Alara Sky, self-proclaimed comedic mastermind with a knack for connecting biochemical dots in ways that make the average textbook look about as exciting as a tax return. Today's topic? We're exploring the hidden powers of, brace yourself, carbohydrates. Yes, the misunderstood macronutrient that always seems to get the blame at family gatherings.
I can just see it now. Carbs, you're responsible for my fatigue, my waistline, and probably the hole in my sock. We love to scapegoat them, don't we?
Absolutely. Carbs are like that one relative everyone points fingers at whenever something goes wrong. But according to the research we're looking at, there's actually a fascinating angle on carbohydrates that goes beyond the usual chatter of refined sugar and bread baskets. We're talking about how properly utilizing carbs affects our metabolic flexibility and even how much carbon dioxide we produce.
Ah, carbon dioxide. I recall learning in school that it's just a waste product. Then again, I also learned that Pluto was a planet, so clearly times change.
Don't remind me. I was definitely one of those kids who felt personally betrayed when Pluto got demoted. But guess what? Just like Pluto's story, there's more to carbon dioxide than meets the eye. It's not just a waste product, it's actually an unsung hero in how well our cells can access oxygen.
An unsung hero named CO2, saving the day quietly without a single parade. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? The concept of metabolic flexibility. That's basically our body's ability to switch between burning carbohydrates and fats, right?
Nailed it. Think of metabolic flexibility like having both a gas engine and an electric engine in a hybrid car. You can run on carbs when you have them and switch to fat when carbs run low. A healthy body does that seamlessly.
So if you're metabolically flexible, you're basically that fancy hybrid on the road, minus the $50,000 price tag.
Precisely. Good metabolic flexibility means stable energy, better insulin sensitivity, and less trouble with body fat. On the flip side, if your body isn't flexible, you get a clunky system that's always confused about which fuel it should be burning, and that leads to issues like insulin resistance.
Right? From what I understand, avoiding carbohydrates long-term can actually create more metabolic havoc because you end up training your body not to handle carbs well at all.
Exactly. We have this popular narrative that says, cut carbs to improve health. But if you do it too long, your body forgets how to process them efficiently, leading to insulin resistance once you reintroduce them. It's like forgetting how to ride a bike, but with insulin and glucose.
So, if I decided to go on a permanently low-carb diet because I'm worried about my love handles, I might actually make matters worse for myself in the long run?
Pretty much. You might see short-term results, but eventually your body says, wait a minute, are we done with carbs forever or what? And the next time carbs make a cameo, you're not ready for their close-up.
Sounds like the body is more comedic than I am. Speaking of comedic moments, let's pivot to how oxygen and carbon dioxide fit into this whole metabolism conversation. You mentioned that CO2 can actually help deliver oxygen better to our cells.
Yes, and it's quite elegant. When we burn carbohydrates properly, we generate more CO2. That CO2 signals hemoglobin to release oxygen to our tissues more effectively. That's known as the Bohr effect, like a VIP pass for oxygen to get into your cells. Meanwhile, in your lungs, the Haldane effect ensures you pick up fresh oxygen and drop off CO2. It's this beautiful cycle that keeps us humming along.
So if I'm out jogging, or more realistically, taking a brisk stroll, and I'm burning more carbs, I'm also creating more CO2, which in turn helps me use oxygen more efficiently. But if I'm constantly depriving myself of carbs, I don't get as much CO2 production.
Bingo. And that can reduce how well your cells get oxygen. Less oxygen means less ATP, which is our body's energy currency. Then your metabolism slows, and you might not burn fats as effectively either. And ironically, that's the very thing people try to improve by cutting carbs in the first place.
Let's talk about electron flow, shall we? I've heard the phrase electron carriers tossed around. Makes me imagine tiny Uber drivers ferrying electrons around inside cells.
That's not far off. Our food contains energized electrons, which need to get inside the mitochondria to produce ATP. They hop onto carriers like NAD, which drive them through the electron transport chain. When everything runs smoothly, we get maximum energy output. But when it doesn't, like if we lack NAD or oxygen, the electrons pile up and cause reductive stress, gumming up the works.
So if carb metabolism is efficient, NAD levels stay higher, ensuring all those electrons have a ride. More electrons shuttled means more ATP. More ATP means we can do all the important stuff, like blinking, thinking, and maybe even a push-up.
You got it. And let's not forget, more CO2 also means better oxygen delivery, creating a feedback loop. The more we can actually use carbs, the more oxygen we can deliver, the more ATP we can make, and so on. Now, if you're relying solely on fat oxidation without enough carb oxidation, you're making less CO2, limiting oxygen delivery, and potentially slowing your metabolism.
There's that synergy again. You know, I've always assumed breathing out CO2 was just an automatic, uninteresting side effect. It's like we have this hidden superpower in our exhalations, and we never knew.
Right? CO2 might not get the best press, but it's pivotal for bodily functions. It keeps our pH levels in check, helps with vasodilation, helps with vitamin K function, and even helps manage calcium inside our cells.
I feel like I need a t-shirt that says Team CO2, because apparently I've been rooting for oxygen all my life, and I've been missing half the story.
We're all fans of oxygen, but its sidekick CO2 is equally important. And let's not forget how breathing matters too. If you breathe through your mouth too much, you lose CO2 faster, which can lead to less oxygen being delivered to tissues. Nasal breathing, on the other hand, helps keep that CO2 at optimal levels.
So I might look a bit silly mouth taping at night, but it could actually help me retain more CO2, improving my sleep and overall metabolism.
Exactly. It's amazing that such a simple shift in habit can have a profound effect. But let's also chat about the practical side of relearning how to use carbs effectively, because not all carbs are created equal.
I know you're referring to donuts versus, say, sweet potatoes. One is a pure carbohydrate source that's nutrient-dense, and the other is basically sugar, fat, and regret.
That's the comedic tragedy of junk food. People think they're having carbs, but they're usually getting a triple whammy of refined carbs, unhealthy fats, and minimal nutrients. If you want to improve carb metabolism, go for whole food carbs like fruits, root vegetables, honey, dairy, things that come with vitamins, minerals, and fiber.
So the next time I see a label claiming a food is loaded with carbs, I might want to check how much fat is sneaking around in there too. Pizza, for example, might have more calories from fat than from the carbs in the crust.
Exactly. Nothing against a good slice of pizza, but calling it a carb source is a bit misleading. Also, your body needs some fat for hormonal health and cell membranes, but balance is key. Too much dietary fat, especially when paired with super low carbs, can dial down the body's enzyme for carb oxidation and push you into that less flexible state.
Then there's that unstoppable duo of physical activity and strength training. Always ends up in these discussions, doesn't it?
It does, but for a good reason. Movement and training help your cells become more adept at utilizing glucose. When your muscles work, they demand energy, which improves insulin sensitivity and helps you become more metabolically flexible over time.
I appreciate that you called it movement, not exercise. Exercise sounds like an obligation, while movement sounds like a joyous expression of my bipedal abilities.
I'm all for joyous expressions. Especially if it means we can continue to enjoy the occasional slice of carrot cake without feeling like we've caused said metabolic mayhem. We just have to burn carbs in a balanced way.
Let's also mention the role of nutrients like B vitamins and magnesium, which support the enzymes involved in carb metabolism.
Yes, you can't run those metabolic pathways on fumes. Enzymes need helpers, like B1, thiamine, which is crucial for carbohydrate metabolism. Magnesium is also a big helper in ATP production. If you're lacking these, your carb metabolism will run about as smoothly as a car on empty.
Okay, so let's recap in everyday terms. We want to embrace carbs, but choose the right kind. Use them effectively by staying active. Keep breathing through our nose to support healthy CO2 levels, and avoid demonizing entire food groups. That should keep our electron taxis from getting stuck in traffic.
What a lovely metaphor. Yes, it's about synergy, not extremes. And it's a bit ironic that carbs have been labeled the enemy when they're actually instrumental in creating the very molecule, CO2, that helps us breathe better at the cellular level.
And that in turn helps us burn fats better when we need to. It's quite the twist of fate. I always love how biology sneaks in these paradoxes.
Paradox is the spice of life, and apparently of metabolism too. There's also this idea that once you get your metabolism back on track, you might be able to increase your calorie intake gradually, something called reverse dieting, so you can have better energy without packing on fat. The body becomes more efficient at burning fuel.
So if I want to avoid the dreaded metabolic plateau, I need to ensure I'm not chronically cutting carbs or calories. That's a revelation for folks who think less is always more when it comes to dieting.
It's definitely a shift in perspective. Quality of food, balance, and metabolic flexibility can all keep you from hitting that plateau. And also, we shouldn't forget gut health. Because if you can't digest and absorb nutrients well, you won't benefit as much from the healthier carbs you're introducing.
So your gut is like the gateway to properly burning carbs. If that gateway is jammed, you're not going to get the full benefits of your dietary changes.
Exactly. That's where things like fermented foods, fiber, and a mindful approach to meals come in. Heal the gut, and the rest can fall into place more easily.
Let's talk about how all this ties back into cellular wisdom. The The big takeaway, as I see it, is that sometimes the things we dismiss, like carbon dioxide, are actually pivotal to the entire system. That hidden wisdom is part of Dr. Mercola's message: look deeper.
And when we look deeper at carbs, we see they aren't just sugar bombs meant to be shunned. They're central to creating CO2, fueling our cells effectively and keeping that electron flow stable. In turn, this helps us access oxygen better, keep our metabolism humming, and remain flexible enough to burn fat when needed.
Which means that, ironically, learning to burn carbs well actually helps us burn fat better. It's like those motivational quotes. Sometimes you gotta let go of what you think you know to discover what you really need.
Spoken like a true wise man. Exactly. And it's not about turning our diets into a carb fest. It's about reintroducing good quality carbs carefully, making sure we have plenty of nutrients, avoiding the extremes of super high fat plus no carb, and remembering to breathe, through our nose ideally.
I do like my nose for breathing, and it's a relief that the solution isn't just to skip out on an entire food group. That approach always felt a bit unsustainable to me. I mean, for the love of all things delicious, do I really have to reject fruit for the rest of my life?
Nope. Fruit can be an excellent source of easy-to-digest carbohydrates and vitamins. You just need the capacity to handle it, which is built through consistency in movement, balanced meals, and taking care of your metabolic foundation.
On that note, we've covered the significance of metabolic flexibility, the powerful role of CO2, the importance of electron flow, and the perks of efficient carbohydrate usage, and we did it with minimal side-eye at the donut industry. I'm proud of us.
Same here. I think we managed to keep the donut jokes to a minimum, though I can't promise I won't indulge next time there's a box in the office. But I will do it guilt-free, knowing I'm taking a walk and breathing through my nose later on.
We want to remind everyone that there's more info out there if they want to dive deeper. Ashley Armstrong, known as the Strong Sistas, has educational resources on improving carb metabolism, and there's a course called Rooted in Resilience for those who really want a guided path.
Yes, there are so many ways to learn more, but it starts with the awareness that carbs aren't the villain. Metabolic flexibility is the goal. CO2 is a game-changing sidekick. Oxygen is the shining star. And you, dear listener, are the director of your own cellular symphony.
That was beautifully said. And with that, we wrap up this episode of Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. I'm Ethan Foster, your loyal observer with a bent toward comedic indifference.
And I'm Alara Sky, your enthusiastic champion of all things witty and well-researched. Thank you for joining us. Remember, your cells are smarter than you think, so give them the fuel and the airflow they need to shine.
Until next time, take care of those miraculous metabolic engines, and don't forget to appreciate the carbon dioxide you're creating. It's literally a breath of fresh air.
Well said. We'll see you all on the next episode of Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. Stay curious, stay balanced, and give those carbs the respect they deserve.